she's talking about how much she loves things like this, that she's always been into bookbinding and calligraphy, and she's just such a nerd like that, you guys. She's just such a nerd. And like a really funny thing about her is that she used to have a shirt that said "Talk Nerdy to Me." Isn't that funny? She doesn't have it anymore, but she used to. Meghan, you're not a nerd. I know you like to get everybody thinking that you are just this like little scientist, with your little big black framed glasses and your pencil in your hair. You're just that sexy librarian. That's you. And it's not so. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. We're going to be doing episode 4 from Meghan's show With Love, Meghan. Her guest today is yet another Netflix character. Her name is Samine Nusrat. But she has other connections as well to some other people who were on the show. She is a chef and a TV host, but she also has connections to Chez Panisse, which is the same place that Alice Waters was a well-known chef at. And you will recall the episode with Alice Waters from last season. It was pretty bad. I don't know if Alice just didn't know what to do with Meghan, or if because she's older, she just maybe was having a bad day. I don't know what it was, but the energy level on that particular episode was like a dying fish on the banks of the river. It just flopped around and gasped, and the energy was bad on that particular episode. But it's complete opposite with Samine. She is lots and lots of energy, and she is just bubbly and fun, very warm. That was the word that I would use to describe her personality. Extremely warm, very approachable, just the sort of person that you would feel like you could be your complete self, a very non-judgmental sort of person, just very easy to be around. So she was really lovely. I feel like they worked really hard on season 2 to get guests that could be on screen, because Meghan can't do any of the heavy lifting. It's really interesting to juxtapose the first season with the second season as we're getting like deeper into it, and just seeing the quality of the guests versus what we were seeing in season 1. Obviously, they're choosing people who have Netflix shows of their own, and so by nature have had experience in front of the camera, are comfortable in that space. Meghan, I feel like, was chosen not because they had any fantasies that she would do well on camera, even though she was an actress in her former life, as she likes to tell us every 5 seconds, but because she had name recognition. So Netflix would have been dumb not to have tried to do something with that, because people will watch even if the show is bad. But all these other people don't have the same name recognition that Meghan did, so their personalities had to be something. So like yesterday when we had Tan France on, he was lovely, and now we have Samine and Nusrat, and she's also lovely. So at least we have that going for us. But I'll say that if I have one complaint about this episode, it was how spazzy the episode was. It would seem very little footage of her and her actual guest that they were able to use, so they keep pulling away to these separate storylines of Meghan doing other things, mostly because what they end up making is so unremarkable and so easy to do that they could not possibly have made a 30-minute episode off of the food that they end up making together. So we just get lots of Meghan. Oh, like we think we're on the storyline of her and her guest, and then suddenly we're going to go do this craft, we're going to go do this project, we're going to have this remembrance. And it reminded me of when I was a little kid. My mom wouldn't let me watch Sesame Street because she said that they cut away too often from the storyline and that it would give me a bad attention span. So I wasn't allowed to watch shows that kept going from like thing to thing to thing, because my mom said it would break my ability to concentrate. And I've thought a lot about that as a mom myself, and how telling I think that really is, because when you are unable to finish a story from like the beginning to the end, and you keep like breaking off to do other things, it really does mess your brain up. I think that's why people who spend a lot of time watching like TikTok reels and stuff, like they have an inability to be bored or pay attention to a longer storyline, etc., etc. Okay, I'm way off the beaten path here, but I didn't like this episode because it was jumpy. It just kept going from thing to thing, and I'm like, can we just tell the story of you and your guest here? But anyway, that's just me. Okay. Opening scene, she's out, of course, in her Montecito home. She's picking some apples. There's a plethora of apple trees on their property, and she says they do a whole lot of applesauce and apple butter with all of these apples. And so she also wants to take this time, a theme that she keeps pushing, because she always has a theme, she always has a poignant point that she's trying to shove down your throat. This time it's all about holding on to the traditions of our ancestors, right? So that's what she's decided today's poignant point will be. And she says her grandmother gave her this recipe. I don't know. She doesn't follow a recipe when she makes this apple butter. She cuts up a bunch of apples, throws them in a crock pot, and like, a dash of this, a dash of that, and kind of whatever comes to mind. And she even says it in the moment. But then later, when Samine comes over, she wants to be like, this is my grandmother's apple butter recipe. Because, of course, we have to pull on, this is the episode about tradition. But it's not your grandmother's apple recipe, because the apple butter you just made was whatever came into your pretty little head. Anyway, while she's making the apple butter, as she anticipates Samine coming, because that's going to be like part of the snack they're going to have together, she tells us that, you know who doesn't like cinnamon? H doesn't like cinnamon. H doesn't like anything. Later on, we're going to hear in another episode that he doesn't like lobsters. And it's like, he seems like the pickiest eater. It seems like the only thing he does like to eat is roast chicken, which, by the way, makes its first appearance in this episode. Shockingly, we are now on episode 12 of the show, if you count this first season. And we are only now making the roast chicken. I would have thought that would have been a debut item. But anyway, that comes later. She's making the apple butter so that she can then make tartines. She's really into this. She did this in the last episode. I don't know, you guys. This just doesn't look delish to me. All it really is a piece of toast with a bunch of junk on top, okay? So don't start in on this tartine business. But I feel like this is my issue with Meghan and these toasts that she makes. Why are we throwing everything in the kitchen sink on top? It doesn't actually have to be the compost pile. Every time she makes something, I feel like somebody needs to explain to her the concept of like pulling back, and sometimes less is more. Okay, just because you just told me that you drizzled some really good olive oil on top of that doesn't mean that you have negated all the other trash you put on top of that. Because in the last episode we watched, again, she was making her little breads with a bunch of junk on top. Previous season, she was real big on all the platters. How many fruit platters did we see? How many charcuterie boards were we making? All the arrangements of all the things. We're still doing that, but now we're doing it on a piece of toasted bread. She also continues to make this bad timing, you guys. I don't feel like she understands the timing of cooking. If I'm going to take a piece of toast and then I'm going to put on ricotta, then I'm going to put on apple butter, then I'm going to put on apple slices, then I'm going to put on almonds, then I'm going to drizzle it all with olive oil, then I'm also going to put on salt, then I'm also going to put on thyme. Can you imagine how gross that piece of bread's going to be by the time your guest arrives? This is not something we can pre-make ahead of time, okay? This is something that is desperately going to need the immediacy of your guest being right there, and then you make the toast, you top the toast, you hand the toast. I do not want a piece of toast that has been sitting there with the ricotta and the apple butter and then the olive oil. It's all getting into the bread. It's all soggy. I don't want it. Maybe is that supposed to be the consistency of this? Because she consistently makes these bites for these people, and I'm like, soggy town by the time these folks get it. Maybe it's just me. Probably. But Again, I have to remind myself, she's just showing us how to make it. I mean, hopefully we can all use our best judgment. If we decide to make these toasts, these tartines, as she calls them, then we can all do it in our own timing. So I don't need to, I guess, read too much into it. Same thing as when she made those drinks for Chrissy, and like Chrissy was nowhere to be seen. And I'm like, well, those are just sweating on the table, the ice watering down the drink. But maybe the whole thing is just, I'm just trying to show you how to do it, okay? And maybe I need to quit being, the time police. Okay, Samine comes in. She is as cheerful as a sun ray, bright, smiley, lovely. Meghan uses opportunity to give her some lava shock, which is this Persian fruit leather. So it's really tart. It's supposed to be tart. It's not really a sweet fruit leather. So then, of course, we cut away and we have Meghan teaching us how to make this lava shock, but not before we've had the requisite amazement from her guest, who says she's never made it herself, but she loved it. When she used to go to Iran to visit her grandparents, her grandmother always had it, and her grandmother would visit them. She'd always bring it, and it was just so tart. It was so delicious. And oh my gosh, Meghan, I can't believe you made it. This is so meaningful. This is so lovely. This is what my grandparents did. It's harkening back to the old times. And, they try to make it seem as though Meghan, just of her own volition, just suddenly, out of the random blue, decided to make this for her guests. Let me tell you something right now. They get from their guests a list of likes and dislikes so that they can pander to those things and have an episode that works. So they probably asked her, is there anything your grandparents ever had? Because, of course, the theme is things my grandparents taught me, left me the foundation of who I am today. That's the theme. So for Meghan to have made this Persian treat, it's not like Meghan just knows so much about the culture. This woman would have told her that, right? But it's all acting, right? So she's like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I can't believe you made this. Blah, 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 blah. So we got to cut back to Meghan making it, right? It's, the oldest trick in her book, cooking fruit down for hours, right? She makes a paste, then she's got to press that paste through a sieve onto some paper, and then she bakes it, dehydrates it, cuts the paper, rolls the paper up, and puts it in it back. All right. Of course, the high drama in this scene is pressing that cooked down fruit mixture through the sieve. I mean, this is going neck and neck with, can I measure ingredients correctly with the food scale? I mean, these are the riveting moments of the TV show. I'm sorry if I sound so bored. It's just that I am. Okay. After they gum on that fruit leather for a good bit, and Meghan has received her praise, she now wants to take her friend over to do some bookbinding in the craft barn. Meghan wants you to know that this is really exciting for her because, wait for it, she used to teach bookbinding. Of course she did. Let's add that to, I used to work in a yogurt store. I used to help people wrap presents. I used to teach calligraphy. I used to babysit for some Catholic families. I used to help in my grandfather's antique store. I used to help in my mom's trinket business. I used to. You lie. That's what you do now. And you used to teach bookbinding. That's not like, teaching bookbinding isn't just like this random little trick that you used to have. And even she has to sort of put a caveat in it when they come into the craft barn and her friend's like, oh my goodness, wow, look at this. And Meghan's like, yes, I used to teach it. Her friend's like, you used to teach bookbinding? I mean, it's like, that is a really intricate, if you're going to do it right, it's a whole thing. It's very satisfying to watch. But I am telling you right now, Meghan didn't used to work at Paper Source teaching bookbinding like an actual bookbinder is doing it. Gluing some pieces of paper together and gluing the spine together and slapping on a cover is a form of bookbinding, but even Meghan says, I didn't quite teach it like this. So I don't know what kind of bookbinding they were doing at Paper Source, but I guarantee you that whatever she was teaching at Paper Source in the schools of calligraphy and bookbinding were the most basic of levels, and that it was an introductory course at best. So for her to want to claim that she was like this bookbinding teacher, you just stuff it. Stuff the lies, okay? We already know you can't do calligraphy, so God help us if you were trying to teach it. Your cursive writing is not calligraphy, all right? Just because you added a couple of swoops and swirls onto some cursive writing does not a calligrapher make you, okay? So just because you happen to realize that there's some glue that goes inside of a book and you can stack some pages on top of each other and then with some cloth on it, that doesn't make you a bookbinder. And doesn't make you a teacher of it. So, of course, when Samine asks her, tell me about when you were a teacher for bookbinding, she just sort of skims over it. This isn't the time for details, Samine. Let's talk about what we're going to do today. As she begins to show Samine how to do it, she says, oh my gosh, teaching again. Okay, let's jump into this. As though Samine had really helped her tap into this old memory, memories of bookbinding activated, please. All right. Of course, before they can even begin the arduous task of bookbinding, she's got to offer an alcoholic beverage literally every single time. I have not even made a mention of this because there's so many other things to talk about. But yesterday with Tan, she looked like she was drinking champagne. Okay. Now to Samine, she offers some bubbly. Do you want some bubbly before we start? Of course, she says yes. So again, we're drinking, and all of these are presumably in the morning. So it always feels like we're having ourselves a real fun time at 10 a.m. But anyway, she and Samine do the bookbinding. Again, let me tell you, this is crafting from a height of 30,000 feet. Like you're watching people at a distance do crafts. You are not getting any instruction whatsoever. And they get around that by giving you the QR code at the end of the episode. But if you are ever hoping to learn anything, hope somewhere else. It's not here. The bookbinding situation is just watching them at lightning speed create these books, and it does look fun. I mean, again, this is a cool craft, okay? It's a cool craft, but you aren't going to learn anything from watching this. And so for part of me is like, I'm not showing up to the show because the conversations are riveting, because they ain't. So we are left with conversations from people who, it's okay. Samine's a nice person. She's bubbly, she's warm, like I said, very friendly. Seems great, but they're talking surface level conversations because Meghan doesn't know these people, and she certainly isn't going to have an in-depth conversation with anybody ever for our eyes, for our ears. So we're getting things like Samine talking about how she has begun having people over for dinner on Monday nights because she lives alone and has for many years. And so she likes to cook, but she doesn't want to cook a whole side of king salmon for herself. So she has people over, and then they all gather together in the kitchen, and they're all cooking together, and then they enjoy this big meal. And she says that for her, like, these people weren't even people she really knew that well, but then over time, having them over to her house every single week on Monday, like it's a non-negotiable, everybody comes. They've become like family, and it was all developed around the table. So it's not like the worst conversation you've ever heard. This is not like Chrissy Teigen talking about waiting for hours and hours outside the line at a Cheez-It museum and then never going in because she got tired of waiting. Like, it is slightly better because a conversation about creating really good friends around food and the memories that can be had around a table, that's a really good point for people who are looking to build camaraderie and friendship and real community. A lot of us don't live around a lot of family. And so many of us have had to try to figure out, okay, how do I create community? But that can be a hard thing to figure out how to do. Do it around food, so that is a nice conversation to have. It's a good starter for people who might have the question of, how do I make good friendships, like long lasting, like these people can depend on me, I can depend on them, familial kinds of bonds, So a good conversation there. But I'm just saying, it's not like I wouldn't turn on the show because I'm learning so many pearls of wisdom. But that's what Meghan would like it to be for you, but it isn't, okay? So if I'm not going to learn a craft, I don't really care about the Monday night dinners over at Samine's house, even though that's great for her. I'm really glad. It's not meaty enough for me to watch the show for wisdom on that level. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Well, they're binding books. Samine's talking about her dinners. Meghan's talking about the craft. She's talking about how much she loves things like this, that she's always been into bookbinding and calligraphy, and she's just such a nerd like that, you guys. She's just such a nerd. And like, a really funny thing about her is that she used to have a shirt that said "Talk Nerdy to Me." Isn't that funny? She doesn't have it anymore, but she used to. Meghan, you're not a nerd. I know you like to get everybody thinking that you were just this like little scientist, with your little big black framed glasses and your pencil in your hair. You're just that sexy librarian. That's you. And it's not so. Something that I didn't make much talk of when we were doing that Bloomberg episode was this moment that she has with the interviewer who is asking her about the jam and how she has managed to create the same flavor profile on the market that she's created at home, and what's that been? It wasn't a hostile question or anything, but Meghan, of course, took it with great offense. And we did talk about that part, but what I didn't mention was that at the end of that conversation, Meghan's talking about...
I also have to be conscious of, people who really understand canning can say the bricks method when you're going at scale. I mean, now I'm going to get a little nerdy and jammy with you.
I can tell the details.
But there's a lot of detail in it. There's lots of tiny nuances that I don't think people would think about.
And she does this all the time. She gets into a territory that she's not really quite sure how to talk about. And then she will skip all over it and be like, oh my gosh, I'm getting nerdy. I'm just like talking about all these different jarring methods and canning methods, and I'm just such a nerd. Okay, so I'll stop. I don't want to get all nerdy on you or anything. You don't know how to keep going because you don't know what you're talking about. It's not that you're a big fat nerd that is just on a whole nother playing field mentally than the rest of us. It's not that you have such an in-depth knowledge and you could talk about all this stuff for hours and hours, but you're going to spare us all those details because it's just a lot for like the normal ordinary person who's not nerding out on jam, or nerding out on bookbinding. But she will constantly be like, oh gosh, I'm being such a nerd. Okay. Anyway, and she'll change the subject, and we all know it for what it is. You're trying to cover for your lack of knowledge by pretending you're this big nerd, and you're going to do us all a favor by not getting boring. But, first of all, who's to say we don't want to know the details? Maybe we're nerds too, But this idea that she has of herself as this delightful misfit nerd, where does she come up with that? Where does she get that idea about herself? At what point in her trajectory, in the story that she tells about herself, did you come across that stereotypical idea of like sexy womanhood and decide, I'll wear that one too. I'll wear the white jacket and the big glasses, and I'll just be that big nerd, and I'll just use that as my get out of jail free card. Anytime things get kind of dicey, I'll just act like I'm going to skip the details. Because I'm such a nerd. I don't want to make all the normies have to listen to about all the nitty gritty of all my nerdy thoughts up in here. Gosh, Meghan. Meanwhile, the person who really comes out being truly relatable in all of this is, again, Samine. Meghan, over the course of their conversation, as they're talking back and forth, and Meghan's talking about how nerdy she is, and Samine's talking about her Monday dinners, Meghan says to her, finally plugging into Samine's conversation, well, what do your friends think about having to cook for you in your home, because you're such a phenomenal chef and you've written all these cookbooks and you have TV shows and et cetera, et cetera. And Meghan wants to know, is it hard for your friends? Did they feel embarrassed? It's not like they can just show up with a Stouffer's frozen macaroni and cheese. And Samine laughs, not in like a mean way or anything. And she's like, well, I think it's just that my friends know that I would just be as equally excited to eat the Stouffer's macaroni and cheese. Like, that's delicious also. And you feel not as though she's trying to cut Meghan down in any way. She just like, with Meghan, you always have to question what she means with everything she says. With Samine, she's just like warm, and you really believe she would be just as happy to eat the macaroni and cheese, because Samine loves food. That is evident in this entire production. She's tasting everything, delighting in everything. She's very excited about everything that they're doing. And it's interesting because she's like a real cook. She's tasting as she's going, whereas Meghan never eats anything. Unless the other person starts eating, she always takes her cues off of what the other person does, because she doesn't have her own personality, So she's always taking from whoever she's with so she can mirror back to them so that they'll like her, so that she can then, have one more convert over to her side. So she thinks that all this like, mirroring back to the other person, their personality will win her yet one more convert. So we do see Meghan doing a lot of taste testing for the first time ever in this episode. But here we have delightful Samine being like, yeah, I'd absolutely eat that Stouffer's macaroni and cheese. And then Meghan, oh, me too. So she's got to mirror that back. I mean, actually, I have a Stouffer's in my fridge right now. Like, it's in my freezer. So, like, me too. I'm not too good for it either. Well, you just acted like you were, but again, she doesn't have her own personality, so we've got to, oh, okay, what did Samine say? Okay, let me just say that back to Samine. Whatever. Okay, they finish their books, they finish their conversation, then they're going to go out to the garden to figure out what they can make to eat, right? So they're basically doing their grocery shop out in the garden. It's always part of the episode. What's going on? What's growing in the garden? We'll do that so everyone can ooh and ah at the garden. Of course, it's a rented house, but the whole thing is that like Meghan has a similar garden at her own house. At least that's what she would like us to believe. And so, while it all came out, at this point we know it's not her real house. We're supposed to believe and feel that this is the vibe of her home, though. She couldn't have you in her real home, because that's her sacred space, which I honestly understand. I'm really okay that she didn't want to film in her own house. I wouldn't want a film crew up in my house either, so I don't hold it against her. But at this point, we're supposed to feel as though this space is as much Meghan as her own home would be, right? Anyway, they go out to the garden. Meghan tries to, speak some more profanities. They talk about how so many different things that we eat are as a result of the fact that those two things grow naturally next to each other. So they try to have a profound conversation about the fact that in nature, nature's always giving us everything we need and, creating our realities for us. I don't know. Couldn't really follow it. Okay, they get out of the garden. We're immediately going to have to talk about something else. We're being jetted off to like a different storyline now, because Meghan had told Samine she's made a roasted chicken for them to have with whatever they get in the garden. Now we got to have Meghan talk about roast chicken. We have honestly been waiting for this segment for a long, long time, right? We're 12 episodes in at this point, and we were all wondering when she was going to bring out this blessed roast chicken, since it's all they ever talk about. But quite frankly, after hearing so many times how picky Harry is, maybe he really will only eat the roast chicken. Maybe this isn't her fault. Maybe Harry is incapable. He doesn't like lobster. He doesn't like cinnamon. I mean, honestly, the only thing I've heard that he likes to this point is roast chicken. We know he likes that. And bacon. That's it. Harry's big on the bacon and the roast chicken. So, I mean, Meghan's over there frying rashers of bacon day in and day out and making roast chicken at night. Maybe that's all he'll eat. So anyway, she starts about the roasted chicken, and she reminds us that this is a really favorite dish of hers, but like even the most novice of us can cook roast chicken, she says. And it is true. It's not a hard dish, but it's a good one. She says that she made it for their night of their engagement, but then surprisingly, she also says they ate it at their wedding, as their wedding dinner. But I thought she was a vegan. What did she eat at the wedding? Since, after all, we aren't allowing eggs in the wedding cake, but we're having roast chicken? Also, roast chicken at a royal wedding? Not that roast chicken isn't delicious, it's just not very fancy. Roast chicken, I mean, that's just like Sunday dinner, or honestly, a weekday night, because it's an easy thing to make. Roast chicken at a royal wedding? Is that really what they had? I don't know what their menu was. I just know that there weren't allowed to be eggs in the wedding cake, but I guess no eggs in the cake, but we'll just have its mother on the table. She does give us an interesting little bit of information, a little color about that engagement night. Of course, she did make the roast chicken. We've always heard she made the roast chicken. We've talked about the roast chicken many, 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 many times. But this time she decided to tell us really an honest little moment. And she said when she first got to England, she was really having a hard time with Fahrenheit and Celsius on the oven. And she said it was like an abysmal roast chicken. It was the worst one she's ever made. So that one wasn't anything to write home about. But she's going to teach you how to make another one. Now, okay, before I get to the snarky bit, I really appreciated that she would tell us that little story. See, now that's right, Meghan. That is a relatable moment where you, on a moment and when you really want it to be perfect, that was the time when it wasn't. That's relatable. There's a little bit of a part of me that doesn't understand how the Fahrenheit and the Celsius could be so strangely mixed up when you could just look it up and figure it out. But then I remembered about when I was in Germany and had some people over and I cooked a turkey for Thanksgiving, and I too had problems with the oven, and it too was horribly undercooked and we couldn't eat it. That was pretty terrible. So I was so close to wanting to criticize Meghan, being like, you couldn't learn the lyrics to their national anthem and you can't look up the difference between Fahrenheit and Celsius. And then the Lord reminded me, but neither could you. Because somehow I also ruined the Thanksgiving turkey in a Celsius oven. So I guess we all just have problems cooking birds in ovens. Maybe it's just me and Meghan. I hate to have to put myself in that category, but it was pretty bad. Okay, I will just say this one last thing, though, about the scene. It's pretty awkward at one moment but it needn't have been. Let me just say that. It needn't have been. She's fixing the chicken. And of course, she's putting herbs, spices, butters, whatever, underneath the skin, as you do. Obviously, on the chicken, you're coming, between its legs and you're doing all the things. It's chicken. And she's like, oh, this is kind of awkward. Not a very ladylike shot as she's shoving her fingers into the bird. And it's like, yeah, but you just made it weird. You're just cooking the chicken. Now you've put ideas and thoughts into our heads. Why did you do that? This isn't a very ladylike shot. Oh, it's kind of embarrassing. Oh. Who would say that? What kind of a person on a cooking show would say that? Just make the bird and stop being a weirdo. What about that option? They decide, finally we're back to Samine, so we're going to zip back there, all whiplash. We're off Meghan making her roast chicken. We're back to Samine. They decide they're going to make a chicken and bread salad. And so it's basically like you make the croutons. It's just like a tossed salad with a bunch of stuff in it. And then you eat it. And it's like a bunch of stuff. I mean, we got like chicken, we got Parmesan, we got croutons, we have lettuces, we've got dates, we've got passion fruit. It's a lot of stuff going on in this bowl of food. It's probably good, but it's not a complicated dish, And so how do you have a whole episode on that? You don't. You know, you don't have a whole episode. So it wasn't a really lengthy one. And I think that's why we had to keep cutting over to Meghan, doing this, that, and the other. Samine, by the way, I can't remember if I mentioned this or not, has a connection to one of the previous guests on this show, Alice Waters. Now, you remember Alice Waters. She was from the episode about Chez Panisse, that restaurant in, is it San Francisco? And Samine also worked there, also knows Alice. And when Meghan is preparing the lettuce for the salad, Samine's like, oh, look at you washing that lettuce. Let me just tell you, that is one of the most important jobs at the restaurant. The care of the ingredients, the love and respect for the lettuces. Alice makes sure that is a very sacred moment at the restaurant. I'm sorry. What are you talking about? I don't want to belittle people. I really don't have an intention to do that, but that is the most bogus, boneheaded, stupid thing I've ever heard. The love and respect for the lettuces. Sure, I mean, like, handle the ingredients nicely so that they're not just a hot mess in the bowl, but like, it's like a ceremonial thing over there at Chez Panisse. I guess between hits of LSD and, you know, sleeping with the waitstaff, you're also supposed to have a sacred moment with the lettuces. I mean, I don't know. These places are crazy, all right? Anyway, after we commune with the lettuces, we get on with the show. I will tell you, though, that I already knew that I liked the Samine person just because she's a warm presence and comfortable with herself. But the moment when I really understood that this woman and I were soul sisters was she's talking about putting in the Parmesan cheese, and she doesn't like to grate it. She likes to chip the Parmesan off the block. And so she and Meghan are like just standing around eating the Parmesan, and Meghan's like, forget the salad, let's just eat the cheese. And Samine says, you know, that's my life's dream. Me too, Samine. Me too. I would rather just stand at the kitchen counter and eat cheese, probably, than sit down and eat any meal. In fact, I did that this morning. Me at home alone with a block of cheese is a dangerous situation. I will devour that thing. I just keep going back for slice after slice. Probably why I can't seem to conquer my diet. Anyway, to continue on, this wasn't a very interesting episode. They go on to make the rest of the salad. There's not really a lot of interesting things to say. You know, they try to have a lot of profound moments about the salad. You know, they serve the salad at, surprisingly, a table. Both of them sit down like non-savages and sit down and actually eat a meal rather than a bunch of animals wolfing down food. They use silverware. They eat nicely. And as they sit down to eat it, Meghan looks at the food and she says, it just looks so deeply nourishing. I just like the honoring of each ingredient. Okay, Meghan. I mean, all right. My final point about this episode, and then that's really like kind of where it ends. Like Meghan kind of rushes her out by giving her the book and the apple jam and, you know, some other little trinkets. Oh, the fruit leather. Kind of like gives it to her and was like, anyway, it's been a good day. It's kind of weird. Like the girl's still finishing her food. But what I will just say one last thing. I'd forgotten to mention it. Throughout their talking in their conversation, Samine says that she really likes listening to music. And when her friends come over on Monday nights, they listen to music while they cook. And Samine's like, I'm kind of known for my really bad dancing. You know, she's just kind of joking, talking. You know, you got to fill the silence somehow. And, you know, Meghan, she's all about how much she loves to put on music. It's like a big thing. You know, she's constantly being like, Brooklyn, Michael / director / whoever you are, my second husband in another life. We put on some music. You know, it's always a thing with her. So Samine has earlier mentioned, you know, I'm such a bad dancer. Everyone always laughs about it. Later on in the episode, after they finish prepping the salad and they're going to like go set the table or whatever, Meghan's like, should we put on some music? And Samine's like, yeah, and you can watch my bad dancing. She's referring to their earlier conversation. She's not saying anything weird, but Meghan's response to her is like so awkward. It's so classic Meghan. She always acts like she doesn't know what people are talking about. I mean, maybe because she's not listening to what people are saying. And so in her mind, she's like, why do you want me to watch you dance? But her words and her expression are both like, what a weird thing to say. And she's like, okay, I can do that. She says it real robotically and like her eyes look like, whoa, what a weird thing to say. Okay, I can do that. Okay. And it's like, it's not a weird thing because Samine already said earlier in the show that she's got like a bad dancer and her friends laugh at her, you know? So she's just trying to recall that. She's just trying to create some kind of connection with you, a joke. It's not like a knee slapper or anything, but why does Meghan always have to act so awkward? Why is she so inhuman? There's something really wrong with her ability to connect with other people. And everyone's always like, oh, she's a narcissist. She's a narcissist. Okay, I mean, more than likely. But everybody is suddenly a narcissist. Something's wrong with Meghan because she's got something wrong with her ability to connect with other humans in a typical way. Her ability to read social cues seems really off. She's always one step behind. So I really don't know if it's just that she has an inability to read social cues or it's because she's not listening. She's constantly thinking about herself. What is she going to do? How does she feel? What is she going to say? What is she going to think? So when the other person does or says something that she wasn't paying attention to, something they said earlier, she always has this off guard, I'm not sure how to answer, but it's because she's always in her head. She's always thinking about herself. Take yourself out of yourself for a minute, listen to what the other person's saying, ask them questions about them, get them talking about them, make it all about them. You never even have to worry about you because it is never about you. It's always about them. And then you get to seem like you're really cool and calm and collected because as soon as you turn it on yourself, you're going to be like in a panic, you know? And you stop listening to what the other person's saying. You're not a good conversationalist. You don't hold up your end of the conversation. You don't get what's going on. Stop making it about you. Make it about the other person. And then everything else just kind of falls into place. So simple. All right. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Tomorrow's Friday. So that means the Friday News Roundup. And I will see you then. Bye.